Welcome to Vampire Divorce with Attorney Clarke Young.
Hey everybody, welcome into an all-new episode of Vampire Divorce with Attorney Clarke Young. I am your host, Mike Leon. Clarke here is a seasoned family law attorney. He's got decades of experience handling these high-conflict custody disputes involving BPD dynamics. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about how to build parenting plans that actually shield the kids from the chaos. Everything from drop-off drama to medical decisions. We're going to cover concrete tools that parents can use to keep their kids safe. Clarke, it's good to see you as always. Let me start with this question here, which is, what does a truly child-centered parenting plan actually look like when one parent thrives on conflict?
First, thanks for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. Drafting a really good parenting plan with protections in for the child is what this is all about. I mean, at the end of the day, that is the ultimate goal. And there are two answers to this. One is that if you have a moderately severe borderline who has a little bit of ability to accept the loss of power that they're going to experience when a judge enters an order which gives primary physical custody and probably sole legal custody to the normal range parent, you can have a little bit more flexibility. In cases where they are severely borderline, there's a different answer. So I want to start with the severe borderlines because there are a lot of them out there and I get a lot of those cases. And that's also the easiest answer. It's also the hardest to obtain. To understand why the order would be this way is that borderlines base all their relationships on power and control, deceit, manipulation, and their whole goal and game in life is to subjugate others to their will. You have to understand that is like the gestalt and the archetype that is driving everything that's happening in the relationship, in the marriage, and in the way the parent poorly parents the children. The borderline parents are not good parents. So, in those cases where they're recalcitrant borderlines, you have to take all the power away from them because only then will they comply with the custody order and respect the authority that the other parent has. Why? Because they have no power, and the court would basically say to the normal range parent, you're in charge of your family, you get to run your family, you decide when and where and under what terms that the other parent will see the children. And I've had cases where I've gotten that order, and the normal range parent, basically in this one case in particular, which I think was a great success, he actually negotiated with the borderline that when she was having a bad day, right, because he couldn't say when you're having a borderline flare up or when you're melting down, you couldn't phrase it as what it is or negative. It was just when you're having a tough day, just call me and I'll come and pick up the girls. And when you're feeling better, we'll do makeup days. And that really worked, right? The other thing that happens with borderlines is that, and this isn't just borderlines, but a lot of cases I've called it rent-a-child. Well, it doesn't matter what the judge ordered. Once the other person knows how much child support they're getting, if your client has good resources, they can actually buy additional time with their child. And I'm saying this in that way because I'm speaking from the framework and the mindset of the borderline. That makes sense to them because that's power. Money's power, they want power. So that's the hardest case, or the more severe case, where you have to take all the power away. The second scenario is where you can come up with what I call, and other professionals have called, a conditional custody order. This involves having a competent mental health professional be appointed by the court to monitor the borderline's behavior during child visitations, during their parenting time. And so what the order says, it says, without having to come back into court and modify all the time, this monitor is going to fill out a checklist, if you will, of how the borderline is interacting with the child during each visitation. And when the borderline is able to act in the normal range as a parent, then their time with the child increases up to maybe 50%, which would be the ideal goal, right?
Right.
But until then, it'll go up and down depending upon how the borderline is able to not get triggered, because most borderlines have severe emotional dysregulation issues and they misuse the child in a number of ways. But that's the framework of what the two orders would actually look like without going into too much more detail.
Yeah. Clarke, let me ask you to explain a couple terms here and how they kind of, which one's safer, let's say, in a borderline divorce. There's parallel parenting and co-parenting. Why is parallel parenting, or is parallel parenting safer in a borderline divorce? And if you can explain the terms too as well.
Okay, well, I would, the short answer to the question of, what's the difference between co-parenting and parallel parenting, I'm going to jump ahead. I'm going to say, well, in borderline cases, neither one is probably possible. I mean, that's why the orders are all or nothing, right? The borderline, by the way, is going to force an all or nothing outline, an all or nothing outcome. And if you can wage the war long enough to win, you'll win eventually, because the borderline will give you your case at the end of the day. So co-parenting really means that it's a very loosely structured order. The parents basically get along. I think there's almost a presumption that they're normal range parents and they just went their separate ways and for whatever reason, but they can still act as parents as far as the children are concerned. Now, parallel parenting is really where you don't get along that well, but you can do child exchanges. You can make minor adjustments in the child's schedule once in a while for holidays or situations, and you can deal with medical professionals or healthcare or school activities. You can kind of do things separate but equal, if you will. That's not really what is happening in borderline cases. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but if you could get a borderline to parallel parent, they wouldn't be a borderline. It's just that simple. You're in a situation where the borderline is total war. It's Sherman's march through the South. They are going to do everything they can to alienate the child from the normal range parent, because it's a cliche that while not all parents alienate, all borderline parents alienate. So they're going to alienate the child from the other parent. They're going to manipulate everybody in the child's universe: teachers, psychologists, therapists. It doesn't matter, and it's always going to be a circus. And again, the only way you can prevent that is to have orders that eventually will say, "I'm sorry, but the borderline parent can only communicate her concerns about educational issues through the other parent." Right? You email the other parent can pass those on or not, but they end up sabotaging themselves. I mean, they're so self-destructive, it's unbelievable. So that, I hope that answers the question. That I wish parallel parenting were possible, but it's not in the cards.
Yeah. Well, Clarke, then in that instance, are there other strict communication tools that can kind of, keep the kids out of the crossfire between these parents?
Well, I'm going to broaden your question a little bit from just what communication resources and tools can be used to help the children and keep them out of the conflict, to including the normal range spouse, because the normal range spouse, the spousal abuse in borderline cases, it's not a question of if it's happening, it's how severe is it. So most people, in fact, I would probably even say all people who have been in a borderline relationship for more than a year or so are going to start to develop anxiety issues and PTSD especially, and they'll slightly get depressed. So I'm dealing with clients that have one or more children, so the relationship has probably been going on for 3 years or 5 years, usually, sometimes longer, and they're suffering a bit. So all the things that protect the children are the same things that are going to protect the normal range parent. For example, we have talking parents and family wizard and things like that. Oftentimes the court will order the parents to use those as the exclusive way of communicating except in true emergencies. So I don't allow my clients to communicate verbally with the other client. I don't let them see them in person. You're going to get false domestic violence allegations for sure in almost every one of these cases. You'll get false sexual abuse allegations, all these things. So the communication issue is absolutely a lifesaver. It's not optional. So it'll be emails only, or sometimes text messages in emergency. No face-to-face contact, and if it is, it's recorded. And you can do that in California without a court order as long as there is not a presumption of privacy. If it's a public space or your own home, but there's no presumption of privacy. And I could go into that in more detail, and it is more nuanced than that. But normally you can record the other spouse during child exchanges, for example, to protect yourself. And that's really it. I mean, you're trying to limit the number of ways that the borderline can reach out and control your life on remote control, which they will do. And you're also, if you are in a new relationship as the normal range parent, you have to be careful that your spouse is also protected.
Yeah. Clarke, let me ask you, what warning signs should the parents watch for that their child is potentially being manipulated in the instances that you gave there? And can a parenting plan truly shield them from that?
Actually, most parenting plans don't. I mean, if you can get a conditional parenting plan, as I described, that would help in the situation a lot. And of course, if you have a situation where the court has delegated this day-to-day decision making of how much time the borderline parent would spend with a child, they can regulate that as well. Now, the signs that you're looking for in the child are going to young children. I mean, this is a hard question to answer because it depends on the age of the child. But when the children are still young and they haven't been totally alienated yet, they'll often come to your home after a visit with the other parent and tell you what has happened voluntarily. They'll just say, well, when I was at mama's house, this is what happened, and she did this, she did that, and then this happened. And you can document it. I'm going to make a really important point here. Children are not stupid. If the non-borderline parent and the court cannot protect the children from the borderline parent, the child, as they get older, is going to realize that nobody's protecting them, and they're going to have to align with the borderline parent and hide behind her skirts and just be good parrots, and they'll parrot back whatever they're hearing from the borderline parent, which is your father is a deadbeat, he doesn't love you, he doesn't care, he doesn't show up, whatever it is. They're going to alienate the child, and your father's actually a bad person, and that's the message. And here another thing which we could talk about. I mean, I'm laughing because it's so absurd, but you get these court orders where judges will order children into reunification therapy. I got news for you. Any borderline can undo what a good therapist can accomplish in 6 months in 1 hour. That's the ratio. 6 months, and in 1 hour it can be undone. So for courts to keep ordering reunification therapy, that's not going to happen. The child will never get reunified because the therapist isn't going to be with the child 24/7 and helping the child disengage and understand and see what's happening with the borderline parent, how they're being manipulated. And again, depending upon the age of the child, the imprint of that is deeper or not as deep, depending upon the age and the severity of the borderline. So, the kinds of protections that you put in place are really, you just have to keep going back into court for that year and a half or so until the judge has the aha moment and realizes that the normal range parent has been telling the truth from the beginning and the child is just getting thrashed. And the sad reality is that some judges will never get it. I mean, and this is a hard ethical question for an attorney. It's like, why do you keep going back into a judge that is the problem, right? They basically aligned consciously or unconsciously with the borderline, and they're empowering the borderline, and you'll never, ever get the orders necessary. In that case, I'm sorry to say it, but the child is doomed. There's no way you can save a child in that situation. Yeah. And that's why I've said from the beginning, in these cases involving borderlines, the family court system is destroying America one family at a time, because there are probably 10 million families that have been destroyed in the court system over how many years, not dealing with the real issue, which is the borderline.
Yeah. Clarke, let me ask you as we wrap on this episode, if someone's listening to this right now and they feel like their parenting plan isn't working, what evidence would you advise them that they look for, maybe turning points that would justify them going back to the court and asking the court to change it?
Well, as I said before, the little bit of good news here is that borderlines are the same as we all are. We're all the same person everywhere, all the time. We're not one person at home, another person at work. It doesn't work that way. And borderlines, the good news is, because the imprint is so deep and indelible, they're going to continue to alienate and act out and do bizarre things. So you're going to just keep those journals and calendars and diaries, whatever you want to call them. You're going to keep it up. You're going to keep documenting it. And your client is going to come to a point where, on a daily basis, in real time, they're writing their next declaration for the court. You're documenting it. And because it takes 3 to 4 months even to get a hearing in LA County now, you're going to have 3 or 4 months of events where you're basically showing over and over again where the borderline is continuing to do things that normal parents shouldn't do, and they're not in the child's best interest. And again, it's just going back again and again until you get that order. Sometimes you can get a professional to help you. Sometimes you'll get a child custody evaluator who knows what they're doing. Maybe you'll get some kind of a monitor late in the game appointed. There's always costs around that. Who's going to do that and at what cost? But really, it's the answer is you have to go back again and again until the court wakes up.
Clarke, thank you for the time and insights talking about this sensitive topic. I truly appreciate it, as always, my friend.
Thank you.
And that's it for today's episode of Vampire Divorce. If you want to reach out to Clarke and the team, do me a favor, visit clarkeyoung.com today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review, and comment or share this episode with someone who needs to hear it. As always, I'm Mike Leon. See everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.